Welcome to sunny Norway in summer, the home of the fjord and the home of the electric car. More than 50% of cars sold here are EVs, and you really notice it. In my first 24 hours, I spotted 333 Teslas, 50 Audi e-trons, and enough Nissan Leafs to populate a forest. And that is barely an exaggeration. It really does feel like the future, and what you notice is that it's very quiet. The only thing you can really hear is a slightly self-satisfied, smug hum around the place. We're here to drive Mazda's new EV, which is very exciting, except that we can't tell you what it's called and we can't show you what it looks like. Fortunately, however, we can tell you what it's like to drive. So this is not Mazda's new electric vehicle. It's called a TPV, which is a technology prove-out vehicle, or what you might call a prototype. So it looks like a CX-30, but underneath is the platform on which all of Mazda's electric approach will be built. They're going to do everything from EVs to plug-in hybrids to something called a range extender, which will combine electric technology with a rotary engine, which sounds very Mazda indeed. And the engineers tell us it's not like other EVs to drive. You have to use the brakes instead of just getting off and using the regen to slow down. It makes noises instead of silence to tell you when you're going faster or slower. It sounds unusual, electric. Let's find out what it's like. It's hard to overstate what a big move this EV is for Mazda, which is why I was willing to take the unusual move of letting us drive it long before it's finished, and before we all get to see what it looks like at the Tokyo Motor Show in October. The fact that the prototype is this size, however, suggests it will be a small city SUV when it arrives. Mazda has held off doing an EV for a long time now, arguing that it's more of a benefit to the planet to concentrate on reducing the emissions of the cars we're all actually still buying, those with internal combustion engines. But with countries like Norway aiming for 100% of new cars sold by 2025 being EVs, and other European nations openly discussing banning traditional vehicles, Mazda has to act, and this will be just the first of a whole new range of electrified vehicles. Mazda is still being more realistic than most car companies, however, tipping that by 2030, just 5% of its sales will be full battery EVs, with the other 95% all featuring some form of electrification. They're planning to sell a lot of hybrids and plug-in hybrids basically, and they're working hard on that exciting range extender rotary concept too. Driving a prototype is a bit strange. It's a bit like borrowing someone's baby and taking it for a run around the block. There are, teething issues. So this car unfortunately doesn't have the sound that the other EV had. So I've driven one earlier today, so I'm going to tell you what the sound's like. It's like ooh, but also like a car, like ooh, ooh. It's hard to explain. Just imagine. But we're also doing without some safety systems. That doesn't worry me so much. There's no traction control, things like that. So Mazda's put in an artificial sound that creates a sense of acceleration. It doesn't change in volume, but it rises in kind of pitch and frequency to give you the sensation of speed. So you get that kind of feeling you get in a normal car. What's different about this to other EVs is how much like a normal old internal combustion engine car it is, because normally when you get off the throttle in an electric car, which I'll do now, you get this crazy pitching of the nose and a sensation of slowing down. That means you don't have to use the brakes the way you do in a normal car. But in this EV, you do brake, because Mazda says it's a good way to make your body feel like you're driving, because you can use the brakes to push you back into the seat. And that kind of makes sense. So you get your kind of seamless EV acceleration. You get that sensation you only get when you've only got one gear. There's no blurring between speeds. And you get fantastic torque off the line. It really gets up and goes in a way that a normal conventional car can't match. You also get fantastic rolling acceleration. The torque is always there. So you've got 100% torque from 0 RPM, but you've also always got it on the go. What's also noticeable about this car is how flat it sits. The chassis is very stiff, the battery's been used as a kind of stressed member, and you're getting a car that's very, very solid on the road. It feels very firm and very controlled. The car also features a new form of torque vectoring that works differently because of the way electric cars work, and means that you can kind of have the torque moving to the wheel that needs it even when you're off the throttle or rolling down a hill. And you really notice that if you're coming down a section of winding road, changing direction. It really handles quite beautifully. The only criticism of this car I would have is that the steering feels a bit light, even compared to other Mazdas. It's good, it's not without sensation at all. It could be a bit heavier, and perhaps in the final version they'll give you an option to change that. There's also a chance that they'll give you the option of switching between this kind of regen, which is a very non-electric car, and the more traditional version that allows you to back off and not really use the brake. It gives you kind of one pedal version of driving, and that's the kind of modern electric vehicle way. But I really like this car because it makes me feel like I'm driving an old car, all the advantages of that, and all the advantages on top of that of having an electric car. What we don't know yet is which countries will get Mazda's first full EV, and whether Australia will be one of them. Globally, Mazda's plan is only to sell it in countries that use clean sources of energy rather than dirty old coal, and with proper charging infrastructure. Just for comparison, Norway has 10,000 charging stations and just over 5 million people. Australia has, at last count, fewer than 1,000 stations and is rather a lot bigger than Norway. The theory is that selling an EV to countries that will only power them up using coal-fired power makes no sense. It just doesn't reduce the CO2 enough. This doesn't mean Mazda Australia won't fight hard to get at least a few of these EVs into our market. It's a car that tells a good green story for them, and it's also an EV that stands out from the crowd by being genuinely different to drive. One issue in Australia, of course, might be the range. Mazda has calculated that the best reduction of CO2 you can achieve by building EVs is to provide them with the smallest battery possible. This means that the new car will only have a 35 kilowatt hour battery, which is probably going to equal about 250 kilometres of realistic range. Explaining to Australians that they're saving the planet, but they have to do so by charging up more often, is going to be a bit of a tough sell. So what have we learned? Well, this is an EV unlike other EVs. It's more like a normal traditional car to drive, or what they call ICE, the internal combustion engine. But it's more fun because it's got electric torque, it's got seamless acceleration because you've only got one gear. It's pretty cool, but of course it's hard to tell what the finished product will be, and we won't find out until Tokyo. The Tokyo Motor Show, they'll show us the final concept, they'll tell us the range, which we still don't know, and hopefully we'll find out when it's coming to Australia. The rest of the world will get it in the second half of 2020. Australia might get it around 2050. We'll have to wait and see.